reading tonight out of 1 Samuel chapter 23. 1 Samuel 23. Put all of my notes on my iPad, because that's the world we live in. Everything's high tech. I haven't used pen and paper in years. And then this afternoon I thought I lost my iPad. That's the world I live in. I lose things. 1 Samuel 23, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about humility. Talk a little bit about humility. If we were to take some time tonight and go around the room, I would imagine each one of us could share a story or two or 10 or 12 of a time where pride tripped us up. And or where we thought in some way that we were better than we were, and it cost us. And I told the teenagers a little while back about when I was a kid. I went riding my bike over to one of my friends' house down here off the section line, and right over there at their house there was a big hill. And I went down it the other day. It's paved now. It wasn't paved at the time, not on section line, but off the road back there. It's paved now, but it wasn't paved at the time. It was real rocky and it was real steep, and it was naturally the kind of hill that I needed to be riding my bike down. And my buddies, they lived on that hill. They rode down that hill all the time. They didn't think anything about it. And I knew in my brain that I couldn't ride down that hill. But I couldn't tell them that I couldn't ride down the hill. They had already made it. And so I just decided, I'll go down that hill too. And so I go down the hill, and the inevitable happened. My handlebars started shaking like this, and eventually my wheel turned over, and I went over the top of it, and busted up my face a little bit and scraped my knee pretty good. I didn't break any bones. That was real good. But what made me do that was simply the fact that I couldn't admit I can't do that. There's something in us that pride forces us to go beyond what we're actually capable of doing. And it happens to everybody. And Brother Doug preached last week about Saul and about some of the mistakes that Saul made when he was king. And Saul made some big mistakes when he was king. The background of 1 Samuel chapter 23, if you back up, you'll find, and you know the story, that the Israelites had a king, and he was God. And that was the way it should have been. But the Israelites said that everybody else gets a king, so why can't we have, kind of like a little kid, you know? So, all the other nations get a king, why don't we get a king? And they wanted a king. And they wanted a real king, a human king, somebody that would lead them into battle, and somebody that they could follow. And so they began to cry out for a king, and God gave them exactly what they thought they wanted. He gave them Saul. And Saul was a big, strong, tall, good-looking guy. Exactly the kind of guy that you'd think, I can get behind this guy. And so Saul began to lead the nation of Israel, and he did well. But at some point, and I don't know that we can necessarily put our finger on when it was, but at some point in his reign, Saul left God. There's no doubt about that. Saul left God, and as Saul left God, God's presence left Saul. That's just the way it was. In 1 Samuel 16, we find that God rejected Saul as king over Israel. And he called a new king. And he had the prophet Samuel ride out to the house of a shepherd boy named David. And he anointed David as the new king of Israel. But even though David was anointed as the next king of Israel, Saul's still king. In fact, continued to be king for a long time. And so you can imagine, as David eventually found himself in the court of Saul, serving and doing the work, and he eventually found himself as a military leader in Saul's army, the people began to love David. And it's not that they disliked Saul. They still liked Saul, but they loved David. And they would say, Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. David surpassed Saul in popularity. Well, you can imagine that caused some friction. What I want to look at tonight is not really Saul or David. What I want to look at tonight is Jonathan. Because Jonathan was the son of Saul. And I think if you look throughout all of Scripture, it would be very difficult to find anybody other than Christ himself who exhibited a greater attitude of humility than I believe Jonathan exhibited in the story of 1 Samuel. Look with me in verse 15 of 1 Samuel chapter 23. Verse 15 says this: David was in the wilderness of Ziph and Horish when he saw that Saul had come out to take his life. Then Saul's son Jonathan came to David in Horish and encouraged him in his faith in God, saying, "Don't be afraid, for my father Saul will never lay a hand on you. You yourself will be king over Israel, and I'll be your second in command. Even my father Saul knows it's true." Then the two of them made a covenant in the Lord's presence. Afterward, David remained in Horish while Jonathan went home. We're not told a whole lot about Jonathan throughout the story. We do get little bits and pieces of his life here, but his life is not discussed in major detail. But we do know that he was the son of the king. We do know that he was also a great military leader, a brave and courageous warrior. And so we have to assume, and we also know that Saul reigned for 42 years. He reigned for a long time. And so for at least a huge part of Jonathan's life, if not all of his life, he was very likely brought up under the assumption that, Jonathan, one of these days you'll be king. One of these days, your dad's not going to be around anymore. And when that day comes, Saul, it will be, Jonathan, it will be your job to step up to the plate and lead your people Israel. It's very likely that Jonathan was taught and was trained and was educated and was prepared and was equipped for that moment in history. And so when we find Saul going out and we see the friction between Saul and David, you would think that Jonathan would side with Saul. You would assume that he would do that, and yet he doesn't. Jonathan sides with David. Actually, Jonathan sides with God when you get right down to it. Saul loses his mind in 1 Samuel. He just flat out loses his mind and begins to chase after David like a dog. And he just begins to hunt him down, trying with everything in his power to get rid of David. He's trying to take David's life. You would expect that Jonathan would line up right behind his dad and say, "Go get him, Dad. Go get him. I'm behind you. I'm with you 100%. David was a threat to Saul's reign. He was also a threat to Jonathan's. David was the bad guy from Saul's perspective. You would expect Jonathan to just jump right on board. The idea of Jonathan stepping off to the side and saying, I know that I'm here to the throne. I know that I should probably be next here, but look, David, I'll step back. You jump in there. You become king over Israel. And I'll be your second in command. He says, I'll be your biggest supporter. I'll be the guy that steps in behind you, that follows you into battle. I'll be that guy. It's unprecedented. It's unheard of. It's an incredible example of humility. And I think we see two things in particular about the humility that Jonathan exhibits. Number one, humility is putting God first. Humility is putting God first. Jonathan didn't just go on a whim and say, David, I think you'd make a better king than I would. Why don't you just give it a shot? He doesn't do that. He doesn't just up and say, I'm just not really sure I feel like being a king. Maybe you should give it a try, David. I'm a little scared. I'm a little timid. Jonathan was not a timid guy. There's no other reason really that we know of in Scripture other than simply the fact that God has chosen David. God has chosen David to be the next king of Israel. And so, if you back up a few chapters, you find the beautiful story of when David was chosen as the next king of Israel. And he wasn't chosen by anybody else in Israel. He was chosen by God himself. It was an election by a party of one. All right, I would love for one of those elections in these days. But David didn't go out and campaign to be the next king of Israel. He didn't print out T-shirts and hats saying, "Vote for David." David was just simply chosen by God himself. And if you back up into 1 Samuel 16, you're going to find the beautiful story where Samuel is told by God to go to the house of Jesse. And you remember, Jesse lined up all of his sons except for one. And Samuel looked at the first one. He was a big, strong, tall, good-looking guy. And Samuel thought, "Oh, this must be the guy. This must be the next king of Israel." And God said, "Nope, that's not the guy. Stop looking at his outward appearance. I'm looking at his heart." And he moved on to the next guy. Again, another big, strong, tall guy. Jesse must have been a big, strong, tall, good-looking guy himself, because he seems to have a pretty good batch of sons there. And yet he goes all the way down through the line, and God says to each one of them, no, that's not the one. And he goes to Jesse, and I kind of love it in there. He says, Jesse, are you sure you don't have any more sons? Are you sure you don't have one more sitting around here somewhere, hiding somewhere? I mean, have you misplaced one of your kids? What is happening here? And so he says, well, I've got one kid that's out there watching the sheep right now. I mean, we didn't really invite him because we didn't really figure this would really have anything to do with him. But, if you want him, we'll get him. Imagine the situation here where David gets called in from watching the sheep. He stinks, all right? He's dressed in his work clothes. All of his brothers have come in. They've been clean shaven. They've been prepared for the prophet to come into town. David comes in probably not as cleaned up, but he comes in. They're waiting on him before they can eat. And he comes in, and God says, that's the one. God himself picked David. God himself chose David. So when Jonathan says, a few chapters later, when Jonathan says, you will be king over Israel, and I will be second in command, he's not just simply saying, David, I think you would make a great king. Let's give it a try. He's saying, David, God has chosen you as king over Israel, and I'm willing to sacrifice my own gain. I'm willing to sacrifice whatever would be coming to me so that God's will may be done. That's a huge, huge statement. If you think about becoming king of Israel, you're thinking about a position of power, which is what men crave. You're thinking of a position of wealth, which is what men crave. You're thinking of a position of tremendous authority, which is what men crave. It's what men fight for all throughout the Old Testament. It's what men fight for all throughout history, even in modern day. And Jonathan has it all in his hand, and he says, you know what? That's not God's will right now. I'll step back. That's a huge statement. Humility is putting God first. The same thing we see, humility is putting others second. Humility is putting others second. Jonathan didn't just say, let God's will be done. Jonathan also said, David, this is best for you to be king. David, this is best for the nation of Israel, that you will be king. It was pretty obvious who was the best. It was pretty obvious who would have made the next great leader of the nation of Israel. It was pretty obvious who God had his hand on. And so Jonathan, not just saying, let God's will be done, also saying, David, this is best for you, and this is best for the nation of Israel. I'll step back and let you step in. We are to put God first. We are to put others second. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 says, do nothing out of rivalry or conceit, but in humility consider others as more important than yourselves. As more important. I've always gotten a kick out of the fact that Paul didn't say, put everybody else on an equal playing field with you. He says, consider others as more important than yourselves. We're to put God first. We're to put others second. And the fact of the matter is, to put others second goes against everything that we're taught in our culture. In our culture, we are taught, you got to take care of you. You have got to take care of yourself. You've got to do whatever was best for you. And whatever happens to everybody else around you is just kind of, it's not really that important. You've just got to take care of yourself. We call it ambition oftentimes. Ambition is forgetting everybody else around you and doing whatever is best for you. That's not really what ambition is. But in our culture, that's what it has largely become. Do what is best for you. Take care of you. We see this even in the church. I'll do the bare minimum that I can for other people, but look, I got to take care of me. I got to take care of my own schedule. I got to take care of my own stuff. Now, in saying that, there comes a time where sickness comes in. There comes a time where family comes in. You got to take care of you. There comes a time where when you do have to take care of you. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. And I'm not saying that it's always wrong to take care of you yourself. But I do think oftentimes we begin to focus inwardly on what is best for us rather than outwardly on what is best for the people around us. And so we see these 2 points, that humility is putting God first and humility is putting others second. I didn't really add this on, but obviously what that means is humility is putting yourself last. Humility is putting yourself last. Humility is being willing to step back and say, you know what, I'll allow God's will to be done. I'll do what is best for others. I'll take a back seat. That's a rare thing in our society. So if humility is putting God first, and if humility is putting others second, You might sit there and say, well, I've got a dictionary at home. Why do I need you to tell me that? You probably don't. But what does it look like in practical application? What does it look like in real life? In what way do we struggle with humility? I'll tell you where I believe we struggle the most with humility is when God has commanded us to do something that seems to not make a whole lot of sense to us. When God commands that we do something that gets us just a little bit outside of our comfort zone. When God commands that we do something that we don't seem to have time in our schedule for. When God commands that we do something that we just don't really see the need for. Then we begin to weigh out, do I need to do it my way? Do I need to do it God's way? And oftentimes the easiest thing is just simply to say, you know what, I'm comfortable with my way. I'm good with my way. I'll do it my way. If you work at a job outside the home, very likely there's been one of your coworkers that the Lord has laid on your heart in a real strong way that you should share the gospel with that person. I felt that often when I was in Louisville and I was working at a restaurant, and I feel that the Lord just laid on my heart, such and such person, they need to hear the gospel. There was one girl in particular that I assumed she was a Christian, honestly, because she was such a sweet girl. I just kind of thought, surely this girl is a Christian, and man, was I wrong? She's an atheist, and a pretty strong atheist, and so we wound up having some good conversations about whether or not God was real and about who God was. But if you work outside the home, if you have many contacts with people outside the home, very likely God has laid somebody on your heart and said, this is the person that I desire you to share the gospel with. And very likely you have said, Lord, I would like to do that, but we're at work. I don't talk about that kind of stuff at work. Lord, I would love to share the gospel with that person. That sounds like a great idea, Lord, but I can't because, I might get fired for talking about religion. Well, I understand, God, I need to be sharing the gospel with that person, but look, it will make her very uncomfortable. I just don't want to do that. Lord, I understand that I should share the gospel with her, but Lord, what if she asks a question that I'm not ready to answer? Lord, I know that I should share the gospel with her, and you know the excuses that they're so easy to just throw out there when God has commanded you to do something that you're not really comfortable in doing. Those excuses, they just sort of come, and they come, and they come, and you can throw out one after another. But humility, a humble Christian, is one who will step back and say, Lord, I know this is what you want me to do, and because it is your will, I will do this. And because it is best for this person to hear your gospel, I will put that person before me. I will put that person's needs before my own needs. Guys, Brother Doug is on a mission trip in Ghana, and you've heard him say it, and I've heard him say it probably more, that he does not like flying. Flying is very much outside of his comfort zone, and I know that for a fact because I've ridden beside him in a plane before. And we rode beside each other in a plane on the way to Africa, and I was in the middle, actually. I had him on one side and Amy on the other side, and I'm in the middle doing this, So I don't like that middle seat, but I'm trying to relax and lay my head back and I'm just trying to get comfortable, and Brother Doug was a nervous wreck over there. He's looking out the window and, kind of keeping an eye on things. I don't know what he thought he was looking at out there. It was dark. But, he's looking out, and then we're keeping an eye on things. And you just kind of wonder, well, why? Why would he bother? If it makes him that uncomfortable, why would he bother getting on a plane and going to the other side of the world to share the gospel with people? Is because, number one, it's God's will that those people share the gospel, and number two, it's better for those people to hear the gospel. He's putting God first, and he's putting others second. And he's getting outside of his comfort zone to do that. If you were working VBS a couple of weeks ago, that probably was not something that you felt comfortable with. It probably may have been something you felt comfortable with, maybe just not something you felt energized for. I don't know. But when you're working with VBS, on Monday things feel pretty good. On Tuesday things feel a little less good. On Wednesday you're thinking, is it Friday yet? And then by the time Friday comes, you're limping across the finish line. Why would we do that? Brother Doug had somebody ask him in town, why do you do that kind of stuff for kids? Why bother? Well, number one, it's God's will for them to hear the gospel. Number two, it's better for those kids to hear the gospel right here when they're young and when they can respond to the gospel. And it's better for them to hear the gospel. We put God first. We put others second. Maybe the Lord's called you to take part in a particular ministry in the church. Maybe He's laid that on your heart for whatever reason. He said, I want you to be involved in that bus ministry. You know that gentle nudging that He gives you? Sometimes it's a nudge, sometimes it's a slap in the back of the head, but however God speaks to you, God has perhaps spoken to you about a particular ministry. You need to get involved in that bus ministry. Oh, Lord, I know I should be involved in that bus ministry, but I don't like kids. I don't know if I can do that. They would drive me nuts. Lord, I know I should get involved in that bus ministry, but I need my nights for me. I need my nights to relax. I got a busy day the next day. I need my time. Lord, I know maybe you want me to be involved in the nursery ministry, but Lord, I don't know if I can handle that. That's just too much stress. That's just too much. I don't want to do that. Lord, I know that you want me to tithe to the church and give 10% of my money to the church, but Lord, I need that 10% for me. I need that 10% for my house payment. Lord, I need that 10% so that I'll have more money to give to my kids. And I know you care about family, Lord, so I'm just going to go ahead and hang on to that 10%. It's so easy to find reasons why God should take a back seat and why others should take a back seat to whatever is most convenient for me. And I say that out of personal experience. And you understand, I believe, because whenever God calls us to do something that drags us the slightest little bit outside of where we feel most comfortable, boy, Satan is just so good at putting those excuses right in the back of your mind, isn't he? One right after another. He has no end to his supply of excuses. Now's not the time. Now's not the place. Maybe after I retire. Well, now I'm retired. I need time with my family. One excuse right after another will just simply be put right there. And so when God has called us to do something, He expects in humility that we would put God's will first. That we would put the best for others second. And that we would do as Jonathan did in the story. I'll take a back seat. We'll let God's will be done. We'll let David step up to the throne. I'll step back. I'll be David's supporter. I'll be his backup. I said we were going to talk about humility. It rolls really more into obedience, which is our word of the month. And really the fact of the matter is humility and obedience go hand in hand. You cannot have obedience to the Lord without having the humility to say God's will is best. So for you in particular tonight, what is it? For you in particular tonight, what is it that God may have called you to do? What is it that God may have led you toward in your life? Who is it that God may have desired for you to share the gospel with that for whatever reason you haven't done it? I have no idea why God would lead me to preach a message like this tonight. But maybe there was a reason. Maybe there's somebody who needed to hear this message because the Lord is leading you in a particular direction. Maybe the Lord is giving you that gentle nudge, that still small voice that is speaking to you, showing you the way that He would have you to go. And He's waiting on you to say, Lord, let me put your will first. Let me put the best will for others secondly. And let me step back in humility and in obedience to your will. What is it God may have called you to do tonight? If you're here tonight and you've never accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior at all, let's just start right there. Let's just start right there. If you've never accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior, don't walk out of here without knowing that Jesus loves you. Even to the point that in tremendous humility, He laid down His life on the cross for you. And He desires that you would simply put your faith and your trust in Him, turn from your sins and become a follower of Jesus. If that's you tonight and you need to make that decision, you're going to have the opportunity to make that decision tonight. Wherever the Lord might lead you, we're going to have a time of invitation. And wherever the Lord might lead you, just simply follow Him in obedience tonight. If you would bow your heads, Brother Roger is going to come forward. And he's going to be here at the front if you need to come and speak with him about anything that the Lord has laid on your heart. And so if you would just simply get along with God for a little while tonight and do business with Him and go wherever He would lead you. Brother Roger is going to lead us in a word of prayer. And then we'll stand and we'll have our invitation here.
Pray. Heavenly Father, you have spoken into our hearts today. You've denying ourselves and putting others forward. Father, first of all, seeking your will and perfect guidance in our lives. And Father, we pray that tonight you'll move in our hearts. Father, help us to understand this with everything that was in us, that is within us. That, Father, we may at all times say Jesus first, me last, others first, and I'll follow. Father, you may receive the glory, the praise, and the honor, and that those that do not know you will come to know you. And so, Lord, we humbly just surrender ourselves unto you, that, Lord God, you may have your perfect will in our lives. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Let's stand together again tonight and sing this song, Jesus Loves Me. I was lost, I was in chains, the world had a hold of me. I was a stone, covered in shame, and he came for me. I couldn't run from his presence. I couldn't run from his arms. Jesus, he loves me, he loves me, he is for me. Jesus, how can it be? He loves me, he is for me. There was a fire deep in my soul. I'll never be the same. Stepped out of the dark, came to the light. When he called my name, I couldn't run from his presence. I couldn't run from his arms. Jesus, he loves me, he loves me, he is for me. Jesus, how can it be? He loves me, he is for me. Well, thank you for your attendance tonight, and I had an announcement that I needed to make, but I wanted to make it at the end. Katura, y'all have Mission Possible this Wednesday night, right? You're still in need of a bus driver to take you to your mission, isn't that right?
That's right, every Wednesday night.
Every Wednesday night. Good, good. If you're willing to sign up for this Wednesday night, we'll take it 1 week at a time here. If you're willing to sign up to drive the bus for Mission Possible, to drive the kids, it's just locally, right, to do mission work
Locally.
around town this Wednesday night. If you're willing to do that, then please let me know, let Katura know, and we'll put you on the list for tonight.
Can I add just a
For
little bit
Wednesday
to
night.
that?
Yes, ma'am.
We're also looking for more volunteers just to be here at the church with us. We have people that will stay here at the church with half the group, and people that will go out on mission with half the group, and they'll rotate each week. So I know it's hard to know what's going on in children's ministry, but we're reaching out to shut-ins, to people that need meals, that just to let them know our church cares about them. So any of you that would be willing, you're not having to lead a lesson or do anything like that, but just be warm bodies to help with the kids, go out or stay in. You can choose each week, but I need more volunteers each week so that we have at least 2 people going out with the group and at least 2 people staying with the group.
All right. So they're needing volunteers to go out with groups, volunteers to stay here with groups over the next few weeks. It sounds like a real good idea, an interesting idea for the summer, that we want to not just keep the kids here at the church and entertain them for a little while, but give them an opportunity to go do mission work in the community. So it's going to be great. If you're willing to volunteer for this Wednesday night, let me know, let Katura know, and we'll put you down on the list. Anything else before we dismiss tonight? All right. Brother Raymore, would you dismiss us in a word of prayer?